Miss, you better look at that note. D.B. Cooper, November 24th, 1971. In context. Location, between Portland, Oregon and Seattle, Washington, United States. Theme, aircraft hijacking. Before, October 31st, 1939, Rafael Minicello, a decorated U.S. Marine, hijacks a TWA flight in L.A. and is apprehended in Rome, Italy. After, November 10th, 1972, Southern Airways Flight 49 is hijacked by three men who demand $10 million. They are eventually apprehended in Havana, Cuba. June 3rd, 1972, Willie Roger Holder hijacks United Airlines Flight 701 from Los Angeles to Seattle, demanding a $500,000 ransom and the freedom of imprisoned black activist Angela Davis. On the afternoon of November 24th, 1971, an unidentified man in his mid-40s wearing a dark suit and black clip-on tie and carrying a black attaché case jumped into criminal folklore. The man, who would later be dubbed D.B. Cooper by the press, boarded Northwest Orient's Flight 305 from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington. During the flight, he passed the flight attendant Laura Schaffner a note telling her he had a bomb in his case. After showing her the device, he stated his demands. He wanted 4 parachutes, a fuel truck waiting for the plane when it landed at the Seattle-Tacoma airport, and $200,000 in $20 bills. If his demands were not met, he would blow up the plane. What happened later that evening, however, remains one of the most perplexing mysteries in the United States criminal history. Parachute escape. When the plane landed in Seattle, Cooper allowed the passengers and 2 of the 3 flight attendants to leave. Officials handed over the money and the parachutes. Cooper ordered the pilots to fly toward Mexican City at a maximum altitude of 10,000 feet, 3,000 meters, and at the minimum airspeed possible without stalling. About 45 minutes into the flight south, he sent the flight attendant to the cockpit and put on his parachute. Somewhere north of Portland, he lowered the rear stairs and jumped out of the Boeing 727 into the dark, rainy night. He left behind 2 of the parachutes and his tie. The FBI launched a massive manhunt, and the military was called in. Helicopters and 1,000 troops on foot searched the area where they guessed Cooper might have landed, conducting door-to-door searches. A military spy plane even photographed the Boeing 727's entire flight path. None of them found anything. All the authorities had to go on was that the unidentified man had apparently bought a ticket in the name of either Dan or Dale Cooper. When police interviewed the man who sold the plane tickets that day, they asked if any of the passengers looked suspicious. Without hesitating, the airline employee replied, "Yes, Dale Cooper." The police subsequently told a reporter the suspect's name was D. Cooper. However, the reporter, who didn't quite catch the name, asked D or a B. The police officer responded, "Yes," and thus the legend of D.B. Cooper was born. Profiling Cooper. Schaffner gave police a physical description of the hijacker. In his mid-40s, between 5 feet 10 inches and 6 feet tall, 170 to 180 pounds, and close-set brown eyes. She told police that the hijacker was well-spoken, polite, and calm. He was a bourbon drinker and paid his drinks tab, even attempting to give her the change. Schaffner also disclosed that the hijacker asked if the flight crew wanted any food during the stop at Seattle. He said that McCord Air Force Base was a 20-minute drive away from the Seattle-Tacoma airport, a detail that most civilians would not have known. His choice of plane, a 727-100, was also very ideal for a bailout escape. These factors indicated that he may well have been an Air Force veteran. However, his lack of safety equipment, thermal clothing, or helmet, which would have afforded him little protection from the negative 70 degree Fahrenheit, negative 57 Celsius wind chill, seems to throw doubt on the claim he was a military man. FBI investigators at the time of the incident argued from the outset that he simply would not have survived the jump. Criminal profiling. Criminal profiling is the type of process of identifying the most likely type of person who committed a particular crime. Investigators look at behavior, personality traits, and demographic variables, including age, race, and location, to build up a psychological picture of a suspect. In the case of D.B. Cooper, his knowledge of the aviation industry and of the Boeing 727-100 suggests that he may have spent his time in the Air Force, but his lack of skydiving skills suggests that he worked as an aviation worker, such as a cargo loader. It is possible that he lost his job during the economic downturn in the aviation industry in 1970-1971 and thus provided the financial motivation to commit the crime. The fact that the FBI could not find anyone local who disappeared from the area shortly after the crime opens up the tantalizing possibility that D.B. Cooper may have been a local man who simply returned home and did his normal job as usual on Monday morning. Money discovered. More than 8 years later, in February 1980, 8-year-old Brian Ingram and his family were picnicking by the Columbia River close to the city of Vancouver, Washington. As the family cleared a spot for a campfire, Brian unearthed a packet of money in the sand near the river. His remarkable find, totaling $5,800 in $20 bills, of which he was allowed to keep $2,850, matched the serial numbers of the ransom money handed over to Cooper on the tarmac at Seattle-Tacoma Airport. The FBI searched the beach and dredged the river but found nothing else. Nevertheless, the search reignited the public's interest in the legend of D.B. Cooper and the missing $144,200. The D.B. Cooper hijacking had all the ingredients of a legend. He got away with it, no one was hurt, and his fate remains a mystery. Public interest was periodically reinvigorated by news that the FBI was still looking for D.B. Cooper. At one point, they decided to treat the case as if it were a bank robbery and appeal to public in a bid to extract any relevant information. They released previously unknown facts about the case, including that he was wearing a clip tie, and the D.B. Cooper frenzy started up again. When I'm not so convinced that the investigation is dead or the story is over by any stretch. Jeff Gray. Comic theory. When Seattle Special Agent Larry Carr took over the FBI's investigation in 2008, he disclosed that most of the messages he received were from people asking him not to solve the case. It seemed that D.B. Cooper had become a folk hero to some. Nevertheless, Carr was diligently about his business. He thought it was possible the hijacker took his name from a French-Canadian comic book. In the fictional series, never translated into English, Royal Canadian Air Force test pilot Dan Cooper takes part in adventures in outer space and historical events of that era. One episode published around the date of the hijacking features an illustration of Dan Cooper parachuting on the cover. This led Carr to suspect that the hijacker had been a member of the Air Force, but also that he had spent time overseas where he could have read the comic book. With the development of DNA profiling, FBI agents took another look at the clip-on tie Cooper left behind on the plane. They found a partial DNA sample on the tie, but it did not match up with any suspects that it had looked at over the years. Promising leads. One intriguing suspect was Vietnam veteran L.D. Lynn Cooper. His niece Maria Cooper contacted the FBI in 2011 claiming she had been keeping a 40-year-old family secret that her uncle was Lynn Doyle Cooper was D.B. Cooper. She said she was 8 years old when her uncle came home badly injured a day or two after Thanksgiving in 1971. He claimed that he had been hurt in a car crash. She said she heard him tell the family, "Our money troubles are over." Cooper, who had died by the time his niece went to the FBI, worked as an engineering surveyor, which may have given him some of the training he needed to make the successful jump and knowledge of the safest places to land in the area. Marla Cooper loaned the FBI a guitar strap she thought would contain his DNA, but no DNA was found on it. She put the investigators in touch with her uncle's daughter, but the woman's DNA did not match the sample on the clip-on tie, which may or may not have D.B. Cooper's DNA. Still, the FBI called it a promising lead, but investigators were never able to definitely connect L.D. Cooper to the hijacking. At the end of the investigation, the FBI was still attempting to match a fingerprint to prints the hijacker left in the Boeing 727. Lasting legacy. The D.B. Cooper case prompted a spate of copycat crimes, particularly in the 2 years immediately after the hijacking. In 1972 alone, 15 similar skyjackings were attempted, but all of the perpetrators captured. In total, approximately 160 planes were hijacked in American airspace between 1961 and 1973, after which security was improved markedly and both passengers and their luggage began to be screened. Whether D.B. Cooper survived the jump or not, his legacy lives on through an aircraft component that was named for him. In 1972, the Federal Aviation Authority, or FAA for short, ordered all Boeing 727s out was later named a Cooper vane, a mechanical aerodynamic wedge that prevents the rear stairway from being lowered in flight. The enigmatic D.B. Cooper case is the world's only unsolved hijacking. After investigating thousands of leads over 45 years, the FBI announced in July 2016 that it was ending active investigation of the case, but insisted that the file remains open. Meanwhile, the legend of D.B. Cooper lives on in music, movies, documentaries, scores of books, and in the lives of thousands of armchair sleuths.